So let's get started, all right? Again, thank you so much. My name is Vanessa. I am a communication specialist with ITS, and I've been using Zoom a lot, as I'm sure many of you have been during these kind of crazy times. So you're probably already familiar with Zoom because everybody's been using it a lot more lately. But what I'm hoping to do today is kind of help you more efficiently manage your meetings if you happen to be hosting one. So today I'm going to take you into some details about how you can schedule a meeting, especially schedule a meeting that's very secure. I'm sure you've heard of Zoom bombing lately, and that's when unauthorized people come into your Zoom session. So we're going to teach you how to protect your sessions a bit more, how to add things like a registration form to help you better manage the attendees. And then I'm going to show you how to actually manage as host within a Zoom meeting today. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. So what is Zoom? So I'm sure you're familiar with what it is. You're on it right now. But just to give you some details about what our license covers. So it is our official online meeting tool at Weill Cornell. And your license with the college can host meetings for up to 300 people at a time. So quite a few people. We've had very few instances where people have been concerned that they'd be able to host the number of people that they want to. You can host meetings with people that are part of WCM or even outside. So if you've got affiliates or just anybody else who is not part of Weill Cornell, they can definitely attend your meetings. You can use telephone, video conferencing. You can record meetings like what I'm doing right now. You might see a little record button somewhere on your screen. I can allow other people to share their screen. I can share my screen with you right now. And you can easily create meeting invitations. There's a Zoom website. I'm going to show you how to do it. And you can also do it directly from Outlook if you happen to work in your calendar quite a bit. It's also very versatile. You can log in from your personal computer, but if you're on the go and you happen to have, like an iPad or a smartphone, you can actually download the Zoom mobile app and take a meeting from there. So it's pretty cool. So how do you get Zoom? So you probably already have it because you're logged into this meeting, but you may not know that you can get it on multiple devices. So that's what this slide's about. So if you have a tag device, you would go to IBM BigFix on a Windows machine or self-service on a Mac, and you would download Zoom from there, all right? Mobile devices, really easy. Google Play or App Store, you can download the app. It's free. It takes a second. And then you just log in with your Weill Cornell Medicine credentials from there to attend meetings. And then on a personal computer, so obviously if you don't have a tag device, you may want to download this on your own, laptop, let's say. So if you go to Zoom's website, which is zoom.us/download, you can actually install the application directly from there. And you'll usually see two options, which is to download the Zoom app or download the Outlook plugin. And I get a lot of questions about what you should do in terms of that. So definitely always download the Zoom app. That's what's going to help you attend these meetings or host meetings, all right? You don't have to download the Outlook plugin, but a lot of people find it very helpful. I put two arrows at the top of my Outlook for Mac. So this is what it looks like on a Mac. My Outlook meeting window, and I'm setting up a meeting, and I've got these two buttons at the top of my screen. One says add a Zoom meeting, and one says settings. So when I downloaded the Outlook plugin, that's what shows up in my little window. And when I click either of those, I just automatically add a Zoom meeting. And if I hit settings, I can do things like add a password to my meeting, add an alternative host. So there's kind of limited settings that I could change directly from Outlook, which is very handy if you happen to work there. If you use the old Zoom meeting plugin, you'll notice like kind of down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, there's an older one towards the bottom that says add Zoom meeting that has like a little calendar icon with a Zoom icon, the Zoom camera logo on it. That's an old one. Don't use that one anymore if you happen to have it. For some reason, when I updated it, it wouldn't get rid of the old one. So it could look a little confusing, but the new ones are at the top that are in blue. All right, let's move on. So Zoom bombings, protecting your Zoom meeting. Like I mentioned before, Zoom bombing is when a malicious party finds a Zoom link and joins it and then kind of takes control and messes up your meeting just because they're jerks essentially. But you can do things on your end that are very simple to kind of safeguard your meetings. And I'm going to go through some of those today, but a really, really big one that we're asking everybody at Cornell to do is please don't share your Zoom links publicly. Meaning if you've got a Twitter account, please don't post the Zoom link there where it's open to everybody. Don't put it on a public website or our events calendar. We won't even accept a public Zoom link on the Weill Cornell events calendar. What we're asking people to do instead is, if you want to obviously promote your meeting for people to attend, you can have direct email so somebody can contact you about it, or you can email like a listserv at Cornell so that it kind of stays more internal. Or you can even set up a registration form within Zoom, which is what I'm going to teach you today. It's very handy, and all of you should be familiar with it because it's what I, sent you guys out and had you register with today. You can also set up a password while you're creating your meeting to kind of safeguard it a little bit more. You can disable a few features so that, if there's kind of a rowdy person in your meeting, they can't take advantage of some features like using private chat, annotating, which is basically writing across your screen, or file transfer to send maybe malicious content. And you could do what I did today, which is have a backup host. So I've got Bridget helping me today. And if something kind of went awry, I'm presenting, but Bridget is my backup and can kind of figure out what's going on and change any settings if she needs to. We do have a website all about this, which is at the bottom of the screen. You do not have to memorize it. I will be sending out these links to everybody who registered today. So you'll get those by the end of today and can kind of review everything at your leisure. So how do you access your Zoom account? You've probably been to the site, but if you haven't, it's very, very useful. You had to go at least once to activate your account, weillcornell.zoom.us, okay? And you hit that sign in button at the top right. But why should you keep going to this site? There are so many things you could do from here. And I've been finding myself in here a lot more just because of, the current situation. But it's so helpful. You can update your meeting settings for all of your meetings going forward from today. You can change your profile photo. I actually prefer to schedule meetings from here now, just because there are a lot more settings that I can control than if I was doing it through the Outlook plugin. I can also manage my registrations, which is what I've been using a lot for Zoom now. I can see exactly who's registered. I can pull all their emails and send them follow-up information. So it's very, very handy. And I can also download reports. So I can see who's registered. I can see how many people have attended my meeting, how long they stayed on to the session. So it's really useful information, that you might want to look into as you conduct your meetings. So I am going to go into the demo, but Bridget, are there any questions that I can help answer before I move on?
There are a couple. One is, we had a Zoom meeting yesterday and the speaker couldn't advance her slide in slideshow mode, only in normal mode. Can you think of a reason why that would be?
Why she would do in normal mode as opposed to slideshow mode?
She could only advance it in normal mode.
Oh, I'm not sure if that was a Zoom setting really, or maybe something that they did in PowerPoint.
Yeah, that sounds like a PowerPoint.
I've actually never seen anything that would, any setting in Zoom that would prevent me from sharing in slide deck mode. So I think that could be actually a PowerPoint issue, but I can definitely look into that for sure.
Well, okay, Phyllis, we'll do some research and get back to you. And then Dara is wondering, can poll questions be set up by the host ahead of time, or do they have to be written by the host during the session?
Good question, Dara. The answer is actually both. And I'm actually going to show you how to set them up in advance today, and then show you how it could be done on the fly. But we'll get to that for sure. Thanks, Dara.
Awesome. Okay, that's all we have.
Okay, awesome. If you guys give me just a quick second, I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint presentation and move into my desktop. So give me 1 second, guys. Bridget, can you see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me just go to Chrome. Here we go. Okay. Can you see that okay, Bridget? Just making sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So guys, I've already logged into my online Zoom account, that weillcornell.zoom.us website. And when you log in, this is the first thing you see. So I have kind of a list of all of my upcoming meetings. I've got this Zoom one, obviously, starting now. And then I've got a meeting tomorrow and then one next week. So this kind of gives you an overview of your upcoming meetings. You can look at your previous meetings by hitting the tab at the top. And I've got a ton of meetings here. I've been having a lot of Zoom meetings. Personal meeting room, I don't really have much here. This is just, I'll get into this, but basically you also have a personal ID that you can use to set up kind of quick ad hoc meetings. And then there's also meeting templates. I don't have any. Usually I kind of customize each meeting. But what you can do is if you have kind of a recurring meeting that has the same settings over and over again, you can actually save that meeting type and then kind of continue to use it so you don't have to always update the settings every single time if they're going to be the same. So that's what meeting templates is. So I'm going to go over to the left-hand side and hit profile. This just gives me generic information about my account. This is the little picture icon that shows up when I'm talking usually. You can change that to anything you want. You can change it to your headshot just by hitting change or edit right here in the corner. You can also see info about my personal meeting ID. What a personal meeting ID is it's a link that is evergreen. It does not change. And you can share it with people if you have just a quick ad hoc meeting. So if I was chatting with Bridget, online through a chat, and then I said, you know what, maybe we should just take this over to Zoom so I can share my screen and we can have like a more in-depth conversation. I would just send her this personal meeting ID. I would not use my personal meeting ID for a large meeting like Tech Tuesday as we're having right now. And that's because I would generate it automatically. So I get a new number each time, a new meeting ID. I don't really want my personal meeting ID out there so much. And that's because since the link doesn't change, anybody can use it to get into it. So again, when we're talking about Zoom bombing and protecting your meetings, kind of keeping that meeting ID secret is, recommended. You don't want people to know it so they can constantly go into your meeting sessions. So that's what the personal meeting ID is. Again, just use it for quick ad hoc meetings, but not necessarily for large scale online meetings, all right? And then you'll notice that you are a licensed user and you have 300 people capacity. That's what your license is, all right? One thing I'll talk about with the settings is make sure the date and time reflects your current date and time, your time zone, which is Eastern time for most of us because we are here in the New York metro area. You can change that by hitting edit. If you do happen to be traveling and are hosting a Zoom meeting, you can actually change this to any time zone that you want. All right. And then when you're done, you just click out of it and hit save. All right. I'm going to go over to meetings. We were here before, but if I click this blue button here, this is how I would schedule a meeting. And I'm going to hop over to that real quick. Webinars. A lot of people ask about webinars. So your license does not include webinars. The reason for that is because we have very limited number of licenses at Weill Cornell Medicine. That's not to say that you can't borrow one, but because they're so limited, that's why we've upped the capacity of 300 people on the meeting licenses, just to make sure that you can have large-scale meetings, whether you have a webinar or not. The difference between a webinar and a meeting is that webinars do not allow people to turn on their video at all. And webinars have something called a Q&A function. So granted, we're doing a Q&A in the chat, but it works slightly differently. And people in webinars, participants cannot talk at all. So really it's just, however many hosts or co-hosts kind of lecturing to people kind of in a void. So they cannot interact at all. If you want some interaction, you want some people on video, if you want to chat with them, meeting is the way to go. If you were curious about webinars, you can actually contact ITS and ask about borrowing one for a short amount of time. But again, they are limited, which is why I really encourage people to know how to conduct their meetings more efficiently. And a lot of our webinar licenses actually are for fewer than 300 people. I think most of them are for 100. So a lot of times you're better off just using meeting. If that makes sense. I'm gonna go into settings. So settings are very, very important, and I encourage all of you to look at this at some point today or the near future. This is where you manage how all of your meetings are going to work going forward. And you can always change this, but once you set it, unless you change it, it's going to happen for all your meetings from the time that you save these settings. So I'm just going to go through a few of them because there are a lot. One thing that I will always tell people to look at are the first two. I turn these off. I turn off the cameras when I first log into a meeting for both me and the participants. I would actually recommend that you do the same. That's not to say people can't turn on their cameras, but also I think it's a little jarring when people log into a meeting and their camera just turns on automatically. So usually I recommend just to turn those off and let people decide if they want to turn their camera on. I usually allow people to join before me, but I have a waiting room set up, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Most of you are in the waiting room today. It's just kind of a little virtual limbo space where you can hang out before the meeting starts. But I don't want to block people from signing in early if they want to. So I just have this turned on. Other ones that you want to look at. So a little further down, you will see mute participants on entry, and I have that turned on. So what that does is when all of you logged in, your microphones were automatically turned off, okay? And I usually have that turned on because it gets a little disruptive if many people log in at once and all of their microphones have been turned on. It gets a little noisy, and so to avoid that, I make sure that this is turned off. That doesn't mean people can't turn their microphones back on, but I'm going to show you how, when you're in the meeting session, how to make sure they stay off if you want that to be an option for you. Then we've got chat. So I'm allowing people to chat. Obviously, you're writing questions in the chat, but I've actually turned off private chat. That's one of the recommendations to prevent Zoom bombing. And the reason is because if you have an unauthorized party in there, you don't want them to harass people through private chat to, basically go to individual people who've attended your session and just kind of bother them. So right now, all of you can just chat publicly to everyone and everyone can see it. I've also turned off file transfer. Some people have said that they, need this, which is fine. So it's really up to you, and the needs that you have for your session, how you want to set this up. But I've turned off file transfer. So again, people can't send malicious content through my meetings. I also have co-host turned on. I have turned on polling. So if you ever do want to do polling on your Zoom sessions, you have to turn it on. It is not default, just so you guys know that. Screen sharing is turned on. And I think those are the main ones that I would recommend that you look at. Yep, there are a ton more, and I would say definitely look at them. But for the purposes of today's meeting, I just want to move on to some more stuff. Under settings, usually you'll see reports. It looks a little different on my screen. It's actually here, but normally it's right under settings. If I hit reports, this is where I can actually find details on who's attended my meetings, who's registered for them, and poll results. So if you click on any of these, so meeting reports could give you registration details and poll results. If I go back, usage reports tell you who exactly attended your session and how long they were logged in minutes. The one thing about this is that when you download this report, they come in an Excel file format. For usage reports specifically, which is who attended your meeting, they're encrypted. So instead of seeing names, you're gonna see like a bunch of gobbledygook of letters and numbers, and that is not useful information to you. What you can do with this Excel sheet is actually submit a form request on my help desk, and someone will decrypt the information for you. I'm going to be sending out that link after today's session, just so you have it handy if you do need to confirm that somebody logged into your session and how long they were on for. All right, so let's set up a meeting, and I'm going to set this meeting up with registration, okay? So I've got this meeting here. I'm going to call this super important meeting. Oops, I could spell correctly for one. So a description here is optional, but I'd highly recommend it if you plan on having a registration form, only because people will see that when they register. So I'm going to put something, I'm just going to write blah, 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 so you'll see how that shows up in a registration form. You just select a date. I'm going to pick one on a day that I know I'm not working so that I don't think it's actually a meeting. You select the date and time. and the duration. So you could pick hours or minutes. All right, I'm going to keep this one set at an hour. I've got it in my correct time zone. You can actually create recurring meetings. So if I check this off, I can say the meeting happens daily, weekly, monthly, no fixed time. I'm going to say this one's weekly, once a week. You can choose, you can say what days it occurs on, and you can choose an end date or how many times this meeting happens. All right. So you can just do standalone sessions or recurring ones. All right. Here's the important part, registration. I'm going to click required. Nothing's going to happen right now. It's going to be shown to you after I set this meeting up. I'm going to require a meeting password. You can create your own one here, but I would definitely recommend keeping it numeric because if you allow people to sign in through their telephone, it's going to be easier for them to type numbers, obviously, than a word. Again, make sure that your meetings are usually generated automatically. And right here, you've got meeting options. Here's where you would enable the waiting room. Okay, so I've got it right there. Only authenticated users can join. That's actually kind of a new feature we've added, and you can use it if you want, although I'll bring up an important point about it. So what this means is I can actually limit this meeting to just people with these domains in their email address. So basically it's anyone at Weill Cornell and all of our affiliates. This is actually a really cool feature, and it further secures your meeting. So when they try to register on the registration form, if they do not have one of these domain names, they will not be able to join. The tricky thing about this is that when they do try to finally sign up for the meeting, or rather attend the meeting, you have to direct them to use SSO to join. So it can get confusing for people unless you direct them in advance that they have to click the SSO option. So just something to, kind of be aware of if you want to use this option. For today's meeting, I actually did not do that. I just used the registration form, and then I kind of look on my own if anybody is using, an outside email address, and then confirm that they attend Cornell. And you can set it up to record the meeting in advance if you want. I had Bridget today as my alternative host. So she's my co-host today. All I have to do is type in her email address. For alternative hosts, for co-hosts, if you're gonna set up the meeting in the Zoom online portal, it has to be a Weill Cornell email address. Otherwise, it will not accept it. Does that mean that you cannot have a co-host that is NYP? It does not mean that, actually. So when you're setting up an alternative host, yes, you have to use a Cornell email address. But when you're actually in the middle of a meeting, I can add co-hosts on the fly of anybody who's attending, and they can be NYP. It doesn't matter, or any other affiliation. So if you're doing it in advance, it has to be Cornell. If I'm doing it in the middle of a meeting, it could be anyone. So hopefully that's clear. All right. So I'm done with my meeting. I'm going to hit save. All right. So my meeting is set up. You'll notice now that I have a registration link right here. And this is what I shared with everybody when I sent out my communication about Tech Tuesday. All right. So I sent out this meeting registration, and then people just click register after filling out the details. You can change this by going down to the bottom of the screen and looking at registration right here, this tab. You can edit this to determine if Zoom automatically approves registrants or you have to manually approve them. I can close registration automatically after the event date. And I usually turn off the social media share buttons because I don't want this to be publicly shared. In this case, I can add custom questions. So I added a question about what department you're from. And you can do, this shows you what the email looks like that everybody gets. You all should be familiar with this. So it just inserts the title of my meeting here, and then it gives you an automated email with a unique link to join the meeting. So if they shared it, it wouldn't matter because it's unique to them. It's not like, a lot of people can attend with that one meeting link. You can also add branding. I added in the banner of my registration form to you guys the Weill Cornell logo so that it looked a little more official. And then I think, Dara, you asked about polls. This is where you could add polls in advance by hitting this poll tab. So I hit add. I would just have a title for it. I would type in the question and the answers, and it's really just limited to multiple choice, and I could choose whether there's one correct answer or several. that people could choose from. And then I would hit save and it would be available. Oh, let me just do this. So if I hit save, the poll is available for me when I have my meeting, all right? So that's how you set up a registration. I am going to now show you my Zoom page here, my Zoom window, so you guys can see exactly what I'm seeing as a host. And Bridget, I'm just gonna ask you to confirm that you can see my Zoom screen.
I can see your Zoom screen, yes.
Perfect, all right.
Do you want to take a question before you move on? Or
Oh,
do you want
absolutely, let's do it.
Okay, cool. Okay, it actually has to do with what you were just saying about making an NYP person a co-host during the meeting.
Yeah.
Lucy is wondering, can the co-host start the meeting without the host? Optho hosts are usually department assistants that are off work during the actual meeting.
So yes, so for example, Bridget's my co-host right now. If she had logged in before me, she could actually be host. So just to point out, there could be only one host for a Zoom session, but multiple co-hosts. So if Bridget logged in first, she would actually be host. If I logged in after her, I would be co-host, but she can switch with me. The way that you do that is actually, so I am hovering my cursor over all of the participants right now. I can see there's 82 of you, that's awesome. I'm hovering over Bridget right now. I can make her the host, right? Or ask her to start a video or withdraw co-host permission. But that's how we would switch roles.
And does that also work? Can you assign an NYP person as a co-host before the meeting?
Not before the meeting, like I did before with you. Like where I add Bridget's email as alternative host, I cannot add an NYP person because their email domain ends with nyp.org. It has to end with @med.cornell.edu. What I'd recommend is if you want an NYP co-host, start your meeting a little bit early and have that person log in. So I actually know Andy right here. I'm gonna hover over his name. And let's say that Andy actually worked at NYP and not Weill Cornell, all right? If I hover over his name and click more, I can actually make Andy a host or a co-host, right? And I can do a few things. I could ask him to start video, allow him to record the session if I wanted. So there's a few things. But if Andy was NYP and I wanted him to be a co-host, that's how I do it. So definitely, if you want somebody who is not part of Weill Cornell to be a co-host, please start your meeting just a little early, ask them to log in, and just assign them co-host rights this way. And that's how you can get people outside of Cornell to be co-host. I hope that answers your question.
Stacey, did that help? I think it's not as easy. I don't think. Okay. Cool.
Yes, it did. Awesome, Stacey. Any other questions, Bridget, before I move on?
One more. I think she's probably. Stacey, we'll give you just a minute, and if not, can Bridget make herself the co-host?
No, she cannot. The host has to make people co-host. So like people can't randomly make themselves co-host. The host has essentially all the power in this. And then I can make as many co-hosts as I want to. Can co-hosts see and manage a chat? Yes. Yes, they can. I'm going to answer these questions in just a bit, but we've only got 15 minutes left and I want to go through a few of these settings before I answer more questions.
Well, thanks guys. Yeah, we'll get to these.
Definitely, I will answer all your questions in just a minute. So you guys are seeing my taskbar all the way at the bottom. And I just want to make a note here. You guys are seeing my Zoom window. This is not usually an option when you share your desktop. You usually cannot see your Zoom window. And it's just so it's not distracting normally in a presentation. I've gone through a bunch of settings to turn this on so you can see it just to demonstrate how it works. So you don't have to worry about your own Zoom screen kind of showing up during your presentation. So let me just go through what all of these settings mean. So I can mute and unmute myself. I can start my video. And this is a new button, this security button. I'm going to click on it. And these functions were already available in Zoom, but what Zoom did when everybody started using it a lot more frequently is kind of push all the security features into one place. So I can lock my meeting, which means nobody else can kind of join us after I do that. I can turn on the waiting room, which I had done prior to the session beginning. I kind of left you all in like a little virtual limbo. And the reason I actually did that is because if I didn't have a waiting room and you guys all signed in before I was ready to go, I noticed that a lot of people will message, did this start yet? I don't hear anything. And I don't want people to be confused about when the meeting starts. So that's why I turn on the waiting room. because it's very apparent that you guys are just waiting for me to start. I can allow people to share a screen. I turned that off right now because I don't want 80 people trying to share a screen right now. But I have chat turned on, and I will let you rename yourselves if you want. I don't really care. That's up to you. But I like all your names as they are. I have turned off people unmuting themselves. Again, because we have over 80 people logged in, I don't want somebody to accidentally turn on their mic and then start talking over me because it's distracting for other people attending the meeting. So this is one way that you can make sure people do not unmute themselves during their session. I can remove a participant if for some reason they're being rowdy, or I can report them even to Zoom so that they're blocked from using it. Again, I have my participants window turned on, so that's how I can see all you lovely people. One really cool thing is I don't see it on my end, but on your end, you might have a little button at the bottom of your participant window that says raise hand. And if somebody wants to hit that button, it'll show it what it looks like on the host side. So raise hand is a cool feature because if you've got a lot of people trying to ask questions and you want to unmute them to talk, you'll see a little hand icon next to them. I don't know if anybody has done it yet. I don't think they have. But if somebody wants to try it, I can. Okay, Eva Flores, raise hand. There we go. Thank you, Eva. So if Eva has a question, she can raise her hand. I can see the little blue hand icon that she has a question. And if I wanted to, I can unmute her. So Eva can ask her question and I can answer it. And then what happens is if many people decide to raise their hands, Zoom places them in the order of when they did it. So I know which question to answer first. And when I'm done answering Eva's question, all I have to do is hit lower hand, and that icon goes away, and Eva moves down to the bottom of the list of people who ask questions. Thank you, Eva, for doing that for me. Again, I have the chat icon, which is how I see all of your questions right here. All right, and Bridget's managing that for me right now, which is very helpful. I've got share screen right here. If I click on that, okay, good. I didn't want it to stop sharing what I was doing. If I click on that, it allows me a few sharing options. So right now I have it sharing my desktop, which is how you see my Zoom screen. I can also have a whiteboard to draw and have you guys draw on it if I allowed for it in my permissions. I can also just share my PowerPoint slide deck, which is how I was sharing earlier. And then I can share any applications that happen to be open on my computer, which are Chrome and Teams right now. So I can share just individual applications if I wanted to. If I wanted to share every single thing I was doing on my screen, desktop is what I would go for. You can also do iPhone and iPad sharing, which is really cool through AirPlay or if you've got a cable that plugs into your laptop. So I've got a Mac, so it recognizes that I probably have an iPhone or an iPad. If you're sharing a video that you want other people to see, I would definitely click optimize screen share for video clips so people can actually hear the video you're playing. All right, let me back out of that. Again, polling. So I have a poll today. And remember, this button won't show up until you turn it on. So if I click polling, I have this poll that I set up in advance. And you guys don't see it on your screen yet because I haven't hit launch poll. But when I hit launch poll, you guys should see something on your end that, there we go. So I can see people are voting as host. And there's a little timer for me so I can see how long I've left the poll up. But I'm getting kind of real-time results of how you guys are voting and can, basically share those results with you during the session. And it seems like Hard G, GIF, is the winner right now, although J, GIF, is catching up. But when I am done with the session, or with the poll rather, I can just hit end poll. And now I have these results and can share them with you if I want to. So you guys should be seeing what the results are on your end, but that's how you would manage it as a host, all right? I'm gonna stop sharing that. Normally this button here, where it says pause, stop recording, is a big round button that says record. I'm already recording, so that's why it says pause and stop. So when you record a session, it keeps recording until you end the meeting. And then what happens is when you end the meeting, there is a pop-up that appears on your screen that tells you that Zoom is rendering your file. And depending on how long your meeting is, so the longer the meeting is, the longer it'll take to render. But normally it, takes like, I don't know, 15 minutes is the kind of case for me for about an hour-long meeting. When it's done rendering, it actually saves locally on your computer. And it'll pop up where that location is. But if you want to look for it, if you lose it for some reason, usually you just have to go into your applications folder, and it's under a folder called Zoom. And that's where all your recordings are going to be. And when you record a meeting, it actually records 3 different things. It records the entire video of the meeting. It records just the audio file. And then it records the chat. There's like a chat transcript in a text file that's available. So it records all those 3 things for you. One really important thing I think you should know is if you record the chat transcript, it records every single thing, including private chats if you've got that turned on. So just something to keep in mind, that if you're in a meeting and it's being recorded and you're using private chat, the host will see what you are saying in the chat. So just maybe be careful about what you're chatting about. There's also breakout rooms. Again, you have to turn on this too. It is not a default when you are hosting a meeting. You have to turn that on in your settings. What breakout rooms do, and I'm not going to turn it on really for you guys because then this meeting will kind of be disrupted. But if you have a lot of people and you kind of want them to break out into smaller groups to, brainstorm or do whatever kind of team building exercises, you would hit the breakout rooms button, and you can automatically assign every single participant into however many number of rooms you want. And Zoom will tell you about how many people, it will assign to each room. You can also assign people in the rooms manually. Automatically is probably much easier for you guys. But just so you know, you can assign people if you would like. And then you would hit create breakout rooms. I'm not going to do that right now because it would, again, disrupt the meeting, but that's how you would do it. And then there's end meeting. If I click on this, you have 2 options actually. One is to end the meeting for all, and one is to leave the meeting. So if I just wanted to end this meeting and nobody else could be in it, it's over for everybody, I would hit end meeting for all. If I just want to leave and maybe Bridget continues the meeting on my behalf after I leave, I would just hit leave meeting and you guys would still be in the session with Bridget. All right. So that's the difference between those 2 options. And one more thing that we get asked a lot about lately is virtual backgrounds. So right here with my video icon, there is a little caret right next to it. And there's an option for virtual background. So I'm going to click on that. And you'll see my virtual option background right now is a wall of tater tots. I can change that to be a little more official. I can make that the Belfer building. So if you want to have an official Weill Cornell meeting, you could use one of our Weill Cornell backgrounds that's available on the brand website. And I'll share that with you in just a minute. But if you want to have a little more fun with some of your backgrounds, you can upload as many as you'd like. And you would upload backgrounds by hitting this little plus icon, and you can add an image or a video to your liking. So I've got a lot here, just having fun with some of the options available. What this is doing right now is actually previewing the video to make sure that, I look good and the background looks good. And then when I was ready to go, I would just start the video and you guys would see the video. You could change it to gallery view and it's kind of that Brady Bunch look. All right. Or I can go back to speaker view. I'm going to turn off my video now. Awesome. Oh, clicked it twice. So that's how you would add a virtual background. One thing that people have brought up is that I try to turn on my virtual background and it's not working right. Unfortunately for virtual backgrounds, you have to be using a kind of newer operating system for it to work correctly. Older operating systems, sometimes you can't even turn on the virtual background, or like your face kind of blends into it and it's a little creepy looking. I can send you what those requirements are, and hopefully you guys can do it. Sometimes it helps to update the OS if you haven't already on your computer. But unfortunately, not everybody can do it. It is a fun thing that you can do. But just check your settings to see if it is an available option. We've got a few minutes left. That's kind of the gist of how to manage your sessions as a host. Bridget, can you help me with the questions because I forget what they are in the place.
Okay, we've got a bunch and I want to make sure I don't skip any. I went back to, I had a couple from Todd and Felicia that I want to get to. Todd asked, how do I get an account and ID if the unit admin is not available?
How do I get an account and ID if the unit admin is not available?
We might have to get back to you on that one, Todd. I'm not quite sure what that question is, but we'll follow up.
Yeah, and I do have the transcript recorded, so I can go
Okay,
back and look at everybody's questions.
awesome.
Um,
If screen sharing is not turned on and you hit share screen, what happens? I think that's going back to when you were kind of going through the settings pre-meeting.
oh yeah, so wait, so if screen share is not turned on, what happens?
If
Um,
screen sharing is not turned on and you hit share screen, what happens?
so yeah, so you're not even gonna have this button available if you turned off screen sharing. And usually the screen sharing option in settings, it kind of controls what other people can do, not necessarily you as host. So I actually have screen sharing turned off for everybody here, but not for myself. So if screen sharing was turned off, if any function is turned off completely in Zoom, you will not see that option at all at the bottom of your taskbar, if that makes sense. That's a better way to explain it.
Cool. Super helpful. Esther asked, can you send key setting recommendations? I said, yes, we'll put those together. Let me keep going through. We answered Phyllis's. On an Apple device, will share screen bring up the open apps in other desktops, such as Mission Control?
So screen share will bring up anything you have open. So if you want to share your mission control app on your screen, yes, you can. I just want to go back. Lauren mentioned, I see the screen share button. You do. If you try to actually hit it, nothing will happen. So, because it's blocked for you guys.
Will the poll record?
Yes. So what happens is, so it should be recorded because I have it shared on the screen. But if you want to get information on how everybody voted after the meeting, you can go back into reports like I showed earlier. And there is a report to run the poll results under meeting reports. There's usage in meeting. You want to look at meeting, and that'll give you poll results.
Awesome. Is there a way to find a recording of a meeting you attended?
So if you are not the host, but you attended, so unless you were allowed to record it yourself, no. The host would have to share it with you essentially. So what I'm doing right now is I'm recording the session so that I could host it online and send it to you guys later. So that's, if you weren't allowed to record it, you would have to ask the host if they can share it with you because it's saved locally on their desktop. So you wouldn't have access to it.
Great. Can you assign people to a breakout room the same way in several sessions?
Yes. So if you wanted to have the same people in each breakout room, you could. You might have to manually do it. I have to look into whether you can keep, I think you can keep the same rooms even if it's automatic, actually. Let me double check that. I feel like you can. So I'm 90% sure that the answer is yes.
And I think there is a question, how do you avoid looking like you're floating in the background? How do we get a green screen? And I think that was answered. Yeah, you do need specific settings
Yes.
for OS to be able to do that. Blanca asked, would IT be able to help create a departmental background? For example, the Kamansky Children's Hospital at Weill Cornell.
I don't know if that would be IT doing it, or I think it's actually external affairs, because external affairs created all of the Zoom virtual backgrounds that are WCM official. So I would actually recommend contacting external affairs to see if they could create a special virtual background for you.
And is there a limit on the number of polls?
I have not run into a limit on the number of polls. I usually just kind of keep it, if I do polling, to like maybe 3 because I feel like it could get overwhelming. But I haven't run into a limit yet, so I don't think that there is.
Great. Oh, and Gloria just confirmed, yeah, external affairs can help with a background.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there a must to have participants pre-register in order to get an attendance list? Good question.
Oh, yeah. So yes, that's a good question. If you do want an attendance list, I do recommend having the registration form. It won't tell you everybody who attended, but at least you'll have like those names and those email addresses in advance. Again, if you click on the usage reports in your Zoom account, you'll see that people attended, but again, it's encrypted. So you'd have to make a special request to kind of like decrypt it. and see exactly who attended. So you can see it in advance and you can see it after the meeting, but you can only see it in advance if you set up a registration form, if that makes sense.
The questions are slowing down. I'm going to take one more skim through to make sure.
I think I got a private, oh yes, I did. When
Okay.
teaching, is there a way that you can minimize the size of a slide so you can see all or most of the students? Ah, okay, Al. I think I know what you're talking about. I think you want to show the slides, but you want to see the students as well, maybe on video. So the hard part is that when you share something like a slide deck, um, it usually takes up most of the screen. And if you minimize it, it also minimizes it on the student's end too, which may not be the greatest experience because they might have trouble seeing what you're doing. Al, I can get back to you on maybe some settings that you could do to kind of help out with that. So let me look into it and see, just to get some more information from you about what you're trying to do. Oh yes, John Wagner, yes. There is a slider. Yes, you can extend the size of the gallery. You can. It is.
Maybe. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. You could if everybody's video's up, you can pull. You could yank on the corner to see more people essentially. But if there's like 80 people like now, if I put it out, I couldn't get all 80 on the screen, unfortunately. Will attendance be recorded for users if they just logged into the meeting and logged out the next instant? Ah, Mohammed, that is a very good question. So Zoom records who attends by minutes. I think though that if you just log in and log back out, it counts that as 1 minute as a default. So you will be recorded, but it'll just say that you were in there for a minute. But if you're, depending on how long you're logged in, it'll have a different amount of time. So I think, Bridget, did I miss any questions?
I just got one from Natasha. I'm not sure if I missed it, but can Vanessa walk me through how to change someone to the host?
Ah, okay, let me do that for you guys. So I am gonna actually, let me show you one thing really quick. A lot of people have their camera turned on. If you did not want people to have their camera on, like in a webinar, for example, so I see John Wagner right here. John, no offense, I'm gonna turn off your camera just for 1 second to show this. I have these 3 little buttons right here. If I click on that, I can actually stop his video, and it stops the video for everyone. So if I click on that, all of you went away. And it's no offense, I was just trying to, to demonstrate how that works. But yes, to that other question that came in about making somebody a co-host, so let me turn off the chat really quick so this is expanded. So you would just go to any person here in your chat. I'm gonna go to Andy again, and you would hit the more button, and I can make Andy a co-host right here. So if I make him a co-host, he'll get a notification on his end that says he's a co-host now, and he'll move to the top of the screen where Bridget is. Just confirming that if I allow participants to chat with host only, a co-host can also see the chat. I think I understand your question, Lauren. I believe the answer is yes. Oh, John asked, what is the difference between a host and a co-host? The only major difference is that since I'm host, I can actually like remove Bridget's privileges as co-host. She can't do that to me. So I can control all functions in the meeting. Bridget can also control most of the functions, but she cannot control any functions as they pertain to me as host.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I may have missed it, but is there a way to be notified if someone who wasn't invited logs into a meeting on Zoom? That's a good question, Megan. I don't think any notification pops up that like blaringly tells me, oh, somebody came in, but I didn't invite them. if there aren't a lot of people on, you can see them, in the participants, and it'll be a little more obvious. But the only way you could really tell is if you download those reports after the session and kind of see who logged in. And then if you see somebody you didn't recognize them, that's how you'd know. But there isn't like a kind of blaring notification that this person was not signed in before. However, if you had the registration and only shared it with, like a closed listserv, I mean, you shouldn't really have an issue with people signing in who shouldn't be in your meeting. Lauren, yes, I do see your message.
I do not, although I see it on Vanessa's screen,
Oh.
but not in my own.
Yeah, so you privately messaged to me. Okay, yeah. Guys, I'm really sorry. I went a little over time, so I'm going to wrap it up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this recording. I'll send it to you at the end of the day, as well as some other, what I hope are helpful links about how to manage your meeting. And if you have any questions after that, just reply back in an email, and I will help you out as best as I can. But again, thank you for attending today's session. I really appreciate your time. Thank you to Bridget, as always. She is an amazing co-host.
Oh, my pleasure.
And, have a great day, you guys. I really appreciate you stopping by. Have a good one.